Welcome back to the Eyes on the Road podcast, where we help you navigate the college and career journey. This month, we've been talking in more detail about the college financial aid process and how the Road to College and Career team at Uplift Education is supporting scholars and families through it all. For today's episode, Camille and I are so excited to catch up with our reoccurring guest, Elexis Fisher, who is an Uplift alumna, as she talks about her experience with the financial aid process. So we're talking about financial aid this month, and that's one element, but it's a major element to the college-going process. And it's also, and so to give some context, financial aid, and also what we associate with financial aid is FAFSA, which is a federal application that universities and colleges use to determine whether or not a student is eligible for some federal aid. We also like to call that free money. And so sometimes, or a lot of times, the FAFSA can be the ticket to accessing free money from the government. So October is the month that those applications open and is what we know it to be financial aid season at Uplift, but also across the country. So Elexis, would love to be able to hear from you just what your experiences has been with the financial aid process and give really some insight of what that looks like in a real way. So we'd love for you to start by sharing or walking us through maybe the first time, if you can remember, when you learned about this thing called financial aid and FAFSA, and some others would also maybe complete the TASFA, which is a state application. But what were your initial thoughts, feelings, etc., when you were first introduced to the world of financial aid?
Oof. So I think I was introduced to the world of financial aid, I think like junior year, because that was when we started actually focusing on the college process and the transitioning into college. I thought about financial aid. I knew it was about getting money to go to school. But I was also I don't know what to do with any of this. And so I remember our first lesson on FAFSA, we had to go to the website. And I just remember everyone emphasizing, don't forget your financial, your ID number or name, and then your password, because you're going to need it. You must keep it. So I was that's the one thing I need to focus on. So for that lesson, I was I can't forget this thing. And then our next lesson on it, we actually got past the first couple steps when you're filling out your FAFSA stuff. So it's pass your personal information, the student information, what schools you're thinking of applying to, you fill that out. And then it gets to the money part. So we're it's asking questions about your parents, maybe if you work, all these other things. And I'm I don't understand a thing. These aren't things that I paid attention to, or I even asked my mom about. And we were able to call our parents to get some number. And I was okay, well, I guess I'm going to call my mom. So I called her. She's why do you need this? And I was well, we're filling out our financial aid stuff. She's oh no, why are you doing that now? And I was well, according to them, it's time to do it. So we're talking, and she's well, I have two older siblings. They've already been through the college process. They've graduated. My sister's gone to 2 grad schools. And so they know the information. My mom and me were oh, what are we doing here? But at least for my mother, she's a tax attorney, not attorney, but she does taxes and other financial things. And so she understands the financial aid process, and in her mind, she was just going to do it for me. And that was it. But then when I was in class, I'm learning about it. So I'm asking her all these questions. She's okay, fine. We're just going to do it together. So that's kind of how I was introduced into financial aid. I learned it through my mom. There's still a ton of it where I'm I don't know what it is because at least for me, those like the finer details regarding like how much income your mom, your family brings in, weren't things that I knew of. So like I had to rely on my mom a lot for those kind of answers and like for those questions and stuff. But I had friends who like didn't have their parents, like who had their parents, but like they weren't able to really help them in this process. And like I just remember them struggling and like wondering how are they gonna like, get this through. But like my advice to them was like just go to the counselor and just keep asking them questions because we can't mess up on this as you mentioned, like this is free money the government's gonna give us. In my mind, this is like one of my only ways that I'm gonna get into college, like not thinking of like scholarships on the side and all those things. But yeah, so those are like my initial thoughts on financial aid and like wondering uh, about the process and how it differs from my friends and the much like needed support with me and my mom.
So when you initially called your mom and she kind of was taken aback, it sounds like where it's like, why do they need this now? Or why do you need this information now? What do you remember around what time was that in the summer, right when school started? Was it around fall?
No, this was around fall. I know at Summit, like right before the FAFSA opens, like that was like the deadline. I think that we needed that they wanted us to like start doing it because like um I could be totally wrong, but I feel like I've heard this many times. Where like the earlier you submit your stuff, like the more money is available and the more money you're gonna get. Um, so like they're really harping on us to like if you can fill out your FAFSA and that stuff. So like my mom, she wasn't thinking about doing that, and like me too, as like we're just now a couple months in junior high school, not really thinking of this at the moment. And like as I mentioned before, like my brother and sister have already been through the college process, but like each of our college processes have been different. So my brother, his financial aid process was uh, like just him and my mom. Where like for me, I had the school who was more of like a guide and the aid. Like we're gonna do this, this, and this at these certain times. It's like that's kind of how like she was taken aback, and I was like, well, I need this information, and they're saying we got to do it. And I explained why with the reasoning like there's more money, so we got to go get it.
Oh, I see. So looking back, when you said they said we need to do it now, I wondered, or have you ever, had conversations with your family or your mom around the difference between the experience with having Summit counselor talk to you and get the ball rolling early versus trying to go through and navigate it without any additional support or guidance?
Oh yeah, there's definitely a difference. For my first year when we were on campus, my friend, she's definitely on top of like all of her financial aid and like the deadlines and stuff. And she does more of the financial aid process by herself. And like her parents assist her, but she's mainly the main one who does it. And so she was like, it's time to do our FAFSA. It's time to do our FAFSA. And we're like, wait, what? It's time already. Didn't we just do it? And so from her, I was like, oh, guess I got to call my mom. It's time for us to do it again. And my mom once again was like, wait, what? It's time to do it now. I'm like, I guess so. Um, so I had my friend help me then. And then, well, during last year, I was like, well, I think it's this time to do it again. I will have to say I'm not the one on top of like the dates of doing the FAFSA. I have noticed, at least on my campus, um, like there's not a whole bunch of like flyers like telling you like FAFSA time is coming or like any emails. We have to go to like the probably like where the our career and financial aid services are. to get that information. So it was very helpful. Like in high school, and I had like the guidance of the school helping me out, at least to like remember these things, because financial aid is important. But once like the school year is going through, like the aid that I have is like what I have for this semester and the next. So I like push that one a little back in my mind until it rolls around again. I'm like, oh snap, it's that time again. Guess I gotta do it this time again.
Yeah, you're definitely right, though. It's the sooner you complete it, the general understanding is that the more access to aid, what you mentioned, will be readily available for you. So having the guidance and the counselors tell you, now's the time, now you're ready, now we need this information, was a big benefit for you. Um, so just reflecting on that, are you glad that you went through this process? Are you happy that you went through this process? Can you speak more around just like your feelings around the process and the support you received?
Yeah. I am glad I went through the process, because at a certain point, like I was going to need to understand these things. Like when I get out of college and I start fully adulting, like these are maybe not the financial aid part, but like some of the questions that they do ask are things, questions in like the process are things that I'm going to need to be aware of. And like right now, like as a junior going to senior year, and if I decide to go to grad school or whatever those plans are, I'm going to need to take like the wheel a little bit more, be able to understand exactly what this paperwork is saying, what these questions are asking me. And then once I get like my financial aid sheet, what exactly does all of these things mean? And through that process, I was able to like at least get some type of information down that I've like continued to remember as like I look through my aid for the semester, look through my aid for the whole year. Um, so like without that process, I'd be completely lost, and I'd probably be like calling my mom and going to like the financial aid services here at Emory, because I don't know exactly what I'm doing with like, what do these words mean? But with the fear of like, I don't want to mess up also being an important thing. And like, at least from my mind. So having that experience and like learning it prior, it was like really helpful.
Thanks for giving insight into that, Alexis. And I appreciate you being open with saying, you know, in the moment when your RTCC team were saying, the time is now, you got to get your FAFSA in now. And even talking to your mom in that moment of just being like, I don't really know what's happening. I don't really know why now, or like what's really needed. But then through that process, it sounds like you and your mom, you know, came together and it made that decision that, hey, it's best that we do this together. Because I know your mom was saying, well, I'll just do it. I'll just take care of it. But then there were things that you were learning that she was like, oh, well, maybe I don't have all the information that I need. And so that's really cool that y'all came together for that. And it sounds like that also helped you have somewhat of a heads up and understanding while you're in college of like, oh yeah, I need to do this every year. And so heads up for those listening, FAFSA is not a one and done thing. You have to do it every year for as long as you want to be in school. So that is definitely a requirement. So Alexis, what would you say, maybe when you, and even thinking about those interactions with your mom, with the process, what was the most frustrating for y'all through this? Or what was like maybe the thing that caused or causes, maybe it still does, the biggest headaches that you're just like, ugh, why does it have to be like this? Why can't it be easier?
Oh, okay. So one, college tuition increases every year. So that's a headache. It's not part of like, I mean, it is part of the financial aid, but like on the side of FAFSA part. But because it increases every year, I didn't understand And still, sometimes I don't understand how my financial aid adjusts to that increase of like tuition and things like that. So the frustration for me, and then it probably runs off onto my mom because she's helping me with this process. Like me keep asking those same questions that have already been answered, but because it's not really sticking with me. How is my financial aid going to shift to this? If, say, I get a job during the summer, I got to start paying taxes on that. What are taxes? How does this impact this money that I'm going to get for school? That is a frustrating topic because my mom, as I mentioned before, she has more of the finance brain. So she says big words that I don't understand. And we have difficulty simplifying that. And so I'm like asking these repeated questions because I don't understand the words she's saying. And I want to make sure that I'm not going to have a giant gap left over because like something happened in like the paperwork on the back end. But we like manage that. I like calm down a little, and sometimes I even search up the big words that my mom says after she's like finished talking to me about this topic, just so like maybe the next time I'll remember this is what she said. I don't need to panic. I just need to like take a step, calm down, feel this process the way I've been doing it, and all will work out. And also because I did mention like tuition rises every year. I talked to my financial aid advisor, and like your aid adjusts to that increase. So I learned that last year, and the way she simplified it, my financial advisor simplified it for me, made so much sense. So for other college students in that process, do go to your financial aid advisor if you're concerned about increases in like tuition or some questions regarding your financial aid. And if like you're living off campus, how's that impact the money you receive, the money that goes into the school, and all those little things in between.
I appreciate you naming that because you're right. I get it. I think you really nailed it of what makes this process so frustrating for a lot of people are those complexities of terminologies and words, and a lot of it is just like government words. And you're like, I haven't heard of this ever. This is my first time. And you want my money? You want details about like how much money my family makes, and you're using these words that I don't even understand. Like, no. Right. And I feel like a lot of even parents have that reaction of, this is my first time hearing about FAFSA. This is my first time hearing about TASFA. And you want the details of how much money I make and how much I paid in taxes. And you also want me to share this with people at the school?
That's everyone. Everyone's in these little business, like your business that should be private at the moment, but it's going to be just a little bit not private just for this process.
Right, exactly. It just exposes those things that, and most people we're just not comfortable talking about. Right.
Yeah.
And then now you have to just send it off on pieces of paper or electronically for all the world to see. Mm-hmm. Well, not the whole world, but people you don't know to see.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of like with social media or apps we download, or even just linking your Facebook to a reservation system to make dinner reservations or things like that. There's all this fine print, that it's like, except, yes, the terms and conditions are so extensive. And then there's fine print and it's like, oh, this is just an application, right? Like what harm could it be? And then you're clicking yes and agree. And it's like, this is a legally binding government document. And so people's trust with the system or the government in different ways, whether it's with financial aid or other things they have to go through, is just always, I think especially now with the pandemic, it's kind of going to be always on, on pause or hesitation. I remember similar to your mom, my mom was the same way, Alexis, exact same, like, what is this? What? Why? Although I was the first one to go to college, it had come up in some ways. And I think the thing that when you said that, when you were talking about your mom, just being taken aback, I can recall some of that same feeling of just like, Mom, they said we have to do it, just not really knowing the why. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, I just know I have to do it. So whatever, where's your W-2? Did you do your taxes? And I'm turning into this, adult in the home where it's like, you feel guilty in a way where you're like demanding all these things and your parents are kind of like, wait, slow down. So I can even now as an adult think back, if someone start asking me for my W-2 and my tax information and my salary, it's like, what do you want this for? What do you need? And so that just definitely recalled a lot for me because I definitely kind of deboed my mom, like tax information, W-2, what do you need? And every year after, like, make sure you file your taxes. I had no clue what taxes were, what, refund checks were, what maybe having to pay back the government was. And she definitely sacrificed so much. And I'm sure your mom, it sounds like, has done the same because it's a huge, I say this all the time, some of the risks our parents have to take for us to go to college. They have to put themselves in a financial turmoil. My mom had to take out a PLUS loan that showed up years later into my adulthood as, on her credit report. And had she said no, I would not have had a degree. So it's kind of like, how are we balancing this risk, as our parents are already taking risks, and then we demand, additional layers of risk for our success, right? They jeopardize their credit or their financial state to make sure that we're straight,
Alexis, is there anything that you were surprised by as far as like maybe a scholarship that you received or a grant that you received?
Scholarship. I said a scholarship. Yeah, I was surprised. So sadly, during like the whole scholarship process of like writing the essays, submitting rap, submitting all those things I need to do for like scholarships outside of school and stuff, I didn't like get any, and that like bummed me out because I'm like, I wrote all these essays. I thought these essays were great, but I still didn't get them. And then I got my financial aid packet to Emory, and I was like, well, that's a scholarship. So I got like an additional scholarship from Emory to add to my financial aid packet that's helping me get through school. So that was beautiful. Another like surprise. So I didn't know the Pell Grant could increase. And this past year, it has increased. Because like I thought the max was just that first number, which I can't recall at the moment. But I checked it last year and then this year, and it had increased. And I didn't know that that was a thing. So like that increase and like the aid from Emory as itself like has helped me. But definitely that scholarship and the increase of the Pell Grant was nice surprises for me.
Nice. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, congrats, right?
Thank you.
Well, shout out to Emory because I know some of the apprehensions around colleges out of state are the price and cost to travel and move back and forth. But I feel like in your case, they were good to you. They looked out for you and made sure that you were able to have the money you needed to finish. So we need an Emory shirt, an Emory sweater. I know what's the crew neck.
I'll be on the lookout. The clearance racks are popping of summer stuff.
No, we'll cash app you. Y'all want Emory swag.
The really nice ones. All right, I'll be on the lookout.
Look one for me too, because I love a good crew neck.
I got y'all. Y'all just tell me your sizes. I know some people who work at the bookstore. Let's really have the
student discount. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Look up those codes in the system to apply to this purchase.
I shall do that for you guys. I got y'all.
Well, Lexis, this has been great chatting with you. And this would be the question to wrap this up for our time. So looking back, I think we've been reflective. You've been reflective on this process and your experiences. So since high school, what are some of those lessons learned around this financial aid process that you would like to share with others who are starting it now? Like they're in the thick of it right now. Or just your peers, so fellow college students who may need some guidance or insight in completing it this year.
Yeah. So for like the peers now, like college students now, like the process looks different for everyone. You'll have friends who might not even know what FAFSA is because they don't have to fill it out. They don't have to do it. You'll have other friends who are struggling a little bit more than you are, needing to cover a certain gap between what they have aid for and what they have to cover. So like, and then the vice versa, you'll have someone who has like really small gap. They don't have to pay not anything, like nothing compared to yours. Don't let that like intimidate you or get you down. Everyone's process looks different. I do recommend going to your financial aid advisor if you are confused and you want to learn more, especially of like the terminology, the wording, what is what, and getting into that why. For the high schoolers who are in the thick of it right now, if your parents are able to assist you during this time, this is like a nice way to connect with them and to start getting a foot in. Maybe they'll be able to assist you during this process. As I mentioned, like my mom was super helpful for me during this time. If you have to complete it more so by yourself, you're taking more of the responsibility on that end. Your counselors are definitely there for you. Use the Uplift people that you know. And if it comes down to it, there are a lot of resources on like the FAFSA web page where like you can search to kind of understand what each of these things mean. Like what is the Pell Grant? What are the differences of these two loans? So if you have to take more responsibility yourself, use all your resources, counselors, and or the internet. And like, once again, that process will look different between your friends and like yourself, but like, don't get intimidated and you'll make it through.
Hey, thanks for listening to today's show. You may find the information we discussed on the description page of this episode. If you have a question or would like more information about what we discussed, please email us at rtcc@uplifteducation.org. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Eyes on the Road podcast, wherever you listen, so that you don't miss our next episode. And until then, be well and shine through.